Hello, in this video I'm going to be going over a traditional 401k versus the Roth 401k. It is generally better to put your money into a traditional 401k. Most people retire with either less money or the same amount of money, and so that's what I'm going to be focusing on and why you want to use a traditional 401k in either of those scenarios. I'm going to be going through the math involved in order to make a decision for yourself as to what's best. You'll need to understand tax brackets as well as the math that goes into the taxes. Otherwise you'll be relying on others to tell you which is better. So I'm going to first start out here with the tax brackets and deductions. And this is for a single person. If the individual is married or has children, the tax brackets would be different, as well as the deductions would be different as well. For federal, as you can see here, when an individual makes up to $9,325, they only pay 10% in taxes. One thing to note is when the individual passes the tax bracket, they still just pay that lower percentage on the initial for their initial income. So for instance, if someone earns $20,000, the first 10%, the first $9,325 will be taxed at that 10%, and then the second set of income will be taxed at the 15%. And then as you can see, there's the 25% for taxes for any income you earn between $37,950 and for any that goes as high as $91,900. And then as you can see, for 28%, any income you earn between $91,900 and up to $191,650 is going to be taxed at that 28% rate. So one thing to be aware of is that when you file a deduction or take a tax deduction, for instance for a 401k, if your income is between $37,000 and $91,000, it'll reduce your taxes by whatever that tax bracket is. So in this case it'll be reduced by 25% federal. Whereas when you earn the income or withdraw it, it has to go through each of these phases before it can be taxed at the 25%. So the first $9,000 that you withdrew in a year would be taxed at 10%. The second set of income would be taxed at the 15%, and so on. State is set up in a similar way. The first $30,870 for Minnesota is taxed at 5.35%, and any income between $30,870 and $124,040 will be taxed at 7.05%. As you can see, it's just 1.5% or 2% difference over here in the state. But if you look over at federal, once you get up to the $37,950, it jumps from 15% up to 25%. And so anything you can do to reduce the tax burden in this range is going to be much more beneficial. If you look down here, the standard deduction and a personal deduction, this is the deduction that the government gives you whenever you file your taxes. So even before you pay any money in taxes, you first take the deduction. In this case, if you add the two numbers together, it's $10,400. So even before you pay any taxes, you'll pay 0% on the first $10,400, and only after that first $10,400 will you pay 10% on the next $9,325. So you'll see how that plays into determining 401k versus Roth 401k shortly here. Alright, so we're going to look at an example here of the taxes that someone would pay if they were to choose a Roth 401k versus a regular 401k. And for the example, we'll look at someone earning $70,000 and who is looking to contribute $10,000 to their 401k. These numbers also apply to IRAs and Roth IRAs. The math would be the same there. So as you can see in this scenario, the individual who's doing a Roth 401k, that $10,000 will be taxed at 25% plus 7.05%. So that's about 32%. So about a third of their income is going straight to the government, and they're not able to invest that 32%. Whereas for the person who chooses the 401k, the $10,000, initially it's not taxed at all, but when they withdraw the income, when they retire, that would be taxed only at 10%, which is the lowest bracket, and 5.35%, which is the lowest bracket for state. And actually that would only be after the initial $10,400 in deductions would be already met. So if they're only withdrawing $10,000, they actually wouldn't be taxed at all that year for that income. So same example, just looking at it a different way. On this page here, example number 1 from another angle. If you had $10,000 to invest in Roth, you could instead save 32% on taxes and invest $14,700. The reason is because the taxes would be 32% less, so $10,000 Roth would cost you the same as $14,700 traditional. And I also wanted to go through the numbers. If you were to withdraw $30,000 during retirement, what that would end up costing you. Would it be as much as the 32% for Roth, or would it be less? It turns out that for $30,000, you would only pay 11.7%. And here is the math behind that. So assuming that you withdraw $30,000 annually during retirement, the first $10,400 would not be taxed due to the standard and personal deductions. The next $9,325 would be taxed at 10% plus 5.35%. That's the federal rate as well as the state rate. And then the federal rate goes up after that to 15%, so the following $10,275 would be taxed at 15% plus 5.35%. So that would be $2,090 that would be taxed there. So the total taxes would be $3,521, which ends up as 11.7%, and as you can see, that's much less than the 32% that someone who's choosing Roth would be paying in. And so it's going to end up as much less taxes. It's almost just a third of the taxes. If someone has dependents such as children and a spouse, the taxes change even more, and instead of it being $3,521, which they pay in taxes, the government would actually pay out between $1,000 and $2,000 just because of the changes in the personal deduction and the standard deduction, and then the changes in the brackets. So that's how it all works out. It's generally almost always better to choose traditional, and instead of paying your taxes at the highest rate that you are tax bracket you're at, when you choose traditional and you withdraw it at retirement, instead the funds are withdrawn and they have to go through each of the different tax brackets in order to get to the higher percentages. And so that's how it works. Feel free to leave your questions below. Thank you. Bye.